Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida. Today is Monday, so it's book club day, and we are in the final chapter of A New Earth. If you haven't joined us for any book club up to this point, don't worry. These conversations truly are standalone. They're profound. They're getting you to think about things that are deeply meaningful. You know, this chapter is called A New Earth. It's really, well, the title of the book, and it's really what it's all about. So it's coming to a beautiful kind of conclusion. And if you want to catch up with book club on my YouTube channel, it's called The Inner Choice. I'm playing with the name of that channel. Anyway, the playlist is there, so you can see all the past discussions. We've basically broken this book into 10-page segments. You could listen to them on repeat for the rest of your life and still get deep meaning from all of them. So this is a really great book. No wonder Oprah has done it twice in her book club, which has never ever happened before. And this week, if you guys are in the Telegram chat, you saw me put there an awesome video. This guy was trying to visually show how old the universe is. And if you saw, they went out into the desert and they basically put lights down so you could visually see the timeline. And it spread over 4 miles. So from the beginning of time to present, which he says here kind of kicks off this chapter talking about how astronomers suggest that the universe came into existence 15 billion years ago, which is like a number that our brains can't comprehend. And so he did this, and then he showed like your life, my life, our lives. They are basically like the width, less than the width. Like I'm trying to get just one hair, right? It's hard to even describe one hair, but if you were to grab one hair on your head, our life on that scale is basically less than the width of one hair on your head. And the timeline is miles long, right? I think it was over 4 miles. So talk about putting things in perspective. Hey there. Sorry, I forgot to say, if you're joining me live, let me know when you get here. If you're watching the replay, let me know you're on the replay. But yeah, so Charlotte, you said you saw the Telegram post. It's pretty wild. To put that kind of into perspective and get that visual, because billion is just not something that our brain can wrap around very well. And the point of that exercise really is to kind of get at this question, right? It's a question that Stephen Hawking asked, and it kicks off this chapter. Why does the universe even go through all of the trouble of existing? Why does it even bother? What is the point of all of this? Why is it continuing to expand? And what is our role? If our role is like, you know, just like nothing in the scale of all eternity, what's the point of it all? And it puts it into an interesting perspective, and the conversation we're going to have today is really getting at that perspective. You know, the yogis in yogic philosophy, they say the purpose of existence is just for consciousness to be able to experience itself. So for the ocean to come into the form as a wave so that it can experience this world of form, only then to merge back into oneness. But I think it was Bruce Lipton. If you guys follow him, he's great. I love him. I heard him speaking one time, and he said, you know, when I was contemplating like questions like this, and I just asked, like, why am I here? What is the point of all of this? And he goes, what I heard so clearly was, well, Bruce, what does chocolate taste like? And he said it just made him stop. And for him, that was the moment he got it. He went, whoa, consciousness has no way of experiencing chocolate, which it has created, right? It can't experience it without a mouth to taste it, without a form to experience it. So pretty interesting, right? This book is heavy. So deeper questions we're getting into, so buckle up. But basically astronomers say, look, we came from nothing. And over these billions of years, what's happened is further expansion, further expansion, further expansion. You think about the number of galaxies that there are, and it's just like, it is mind-boggling. Like your brain can't comprehend it. And there's just continuing to differentiate. What does the differentiating mean? The differentiating is that it's getting more and more like diverse. Think about the abundance that's just here on Earth in like species. It's wild. And then, this is the interesting part. Many theorize that it expands only to then contract again and eventually will come back into nothing. So I'm curious, for those of you live with me now, what do you think about that? Do you believe that that's what it's about? That it is going to just expand only to then fully contract? Put a 1 if you're like, yeah, it makes sense to me. Put a 2 if you're like, no way. It's just going to continue to expand and expand and expand. I'm curious what you all think, because it's like, if you've never stopped and had these inner reflections, I know these are like bigger questions. The name of the book is A New Earth. That's the name of the book that we're reading by Eckhart Tolle. Tina says, it seems so. Yeah, it does. Charlotte says, I'm not so sure I agree. Yeah, and the thing is, there's no like mathematical equation, there's no astronomer, there's no anybody that can truly tell us. But if you look at like life, well, let me back up a minute. If you reflect on this kind of question, it opens you up to realizing, hey, there's outer purpose and inner purpose within my own life, and then of course within the existence of the universe. And for the universe, right, the outer purpose of the universe is this expansion. It's to create form. It's to experience the form it's created. It's to interact with the forms that it's created. And then the inner purpose is to awaken to its formless essence. Consciousness wants to experience itself. The formless wants to experience itself. It can only do so through form. And to reconcile these two, right, means that consciousness, the essence, needs to be brought into the world of form and transform it, because it can then experience itself and act as consciousness in this world. Pretty wild. So on page 280, oops, I flipped too many pages. My pages are sticking together. He says, the ultimate purpose of that transformation goes far beyond anything the human mind can imagine or comprehend. And yet on this planet at this time, that transformation is the task allotted to us. That is the reconciliation of outer and inner purpose, the reconciliation of the world and of God, right? Of this consciousness. So what a time to be alive. You know, I read this and I was like, wow, like we're at the time where we're reconciling inner and outer purpose on the grand scale, right? It's just been expanding. And now we're getting to the point where consciousness through us, through our own realization of that we are consciousness, is now going to be able to experience itself purely. That's what we're doing right now in this life. That's what's happening. And so, you know, he then reminds us that, you know, our minds can't comprehend this, can't comprehend the vastness of the whole. And because our minds put stuff into fragmented reality, right? Some of you even said, no, I'm not sure I agree with this. Like, well, our mind can't really comprehend it, you know? So we all have different perceptions. And I think, you know, one of the things he explains to help you understand how, like, our perception, everything is limited by our own perception. He uses the sunrise as an example. Hey, Doug, good to see you on here. And, you know, where we stand on Earth, we see the sunrise and the sunset at a different time, right? I see Callie on here. She's over in South Africa. The sun rises and sets at a different time for her than it does for me. But we would all probably agree that it is truth that the sun will rise and the sun will set. Like, we agree that that is what happens. And because we see it every single day. And what he goes to say is like, yes, that's how we perceive it here on Earth. From our perception as we are, from the form we are, where we stand. But if you go out to outer space, you see that that's actually not true. The sun doesn't rise and set. The sun doesn't appear and disappear. The sun is constantly shining. That star is constantly on. And so what happens is you realize that sunrise and sunset is a relative truth. It's based on our perception, but it's actually false. Okay? Because it's limited by the observer. We are limited from where we stand and from what we can see with where we are. So it seems true, but it is a relative truth, not an absolute truth. All right. And I think the sunrise and sunset is probably the best example of that, because we can kind of go, okay, yeah, like astronauts go out into space and they see the sun shining all the time, right? Because that's what it's actually doing. It appears one way, though, for us. And he then says, you know, if you really want to go a bit deeper with this relativity thing, he says your life is also a relative truth. It is not absolute truth. And this is what kind of makes you go, what? And he talks about the fact that you and life are actually one thing, not two things. The ocean and the wave, it's all just one thing, but the wave can feel like it's its own independent thing. but it's really not. It's just expressing and going back in, expressing and going back in. And that's us. And we're never separate from the ocean. But we perceive ourselves to be, right? Our ego mind, the individualistic part of us, believes ourselves to be separate, but the truth is that we're not. And so he talks about, I love what he called it. He said, a brief history of your life. A brief history of all of us. This is on page 282 to 283. And he kind of sums it up and he says, look, each person's life represents a unique way in which the universe is experiencing itself. It's a unique reality. Each one of us is having our own unique reality. But the universe, right? The universe moves into expansion and contraction. And you think about, on this planet, everything we look at has a polar opposite. The heartbeat, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. Your breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out. Our sleep cycle, waking, sleeping, waking, sleeping, waking, sleeping, waking, sleeping. We're actually going form to formless, form to formless. Most people don't know that in deep sleep, like a trap door opens and you go and you rest back in consciousness. That's what happens. In Yoga Nidra, I take you there. Those of you in Mastery know this secret. But here's the thing, is like there's a life cycle, expansion and contraction, right? You just appear pretty much like out of nowhere. I am hatching chicks right now, and it is a wild experience to see how life is created. Obviously the eggs have to be fertilized, but just by putting heat and humidity, right? 99, I think it's like 99.5 degrees, and it's like 45 to 55% humidity. These eggs, all of a sudden, life appears. And after 21 days, there's a chick. Unbelievable to me. Just unbelievable. And so I love what he says, you suddenly appear. We just kind of life appears. Okay? There is life appearing in my kitchen right now. There are 12 eggs and life is appearing in them right now. And then birth happens and expansion happens. And we have chicks that we got a couple weeks ago that are now 2 weeks old, almost 3 weeks. And they're just growing. The expansion is unbelievable. Every morning I'm they got an extra inch on them. They're expanding. The same thing happened with us, right? We started and then we've just been expanding. We've been growing. Yes, physical growth, but also in knowledge, right? My chicks are learning about life, and each of us has gained knowledge. We've gained insights. We've gained possessions. We've gained influence. We have this outer purpose of where we're pursuing things. Our ego has taken hold. Our ego has started to grow. Our individualized part of ourself is growing. And the funny thing is the ego never wants to stop growing. But the reality of the nature of life is that there is expansion and then contraction. Okay? And so inevitably, the return movement has to start in all of our lives. It might start because people close to you start dying. And you start to see, wow, my world is shifting. It's changing. It can't just expand for forever. Maybe you lose your health and you witness your physical capacity declining. Consciousness, right, is experiencing its sunset. And your sphere of influence will go down. You will become less. And your ego is going to get very anxious because it's I need to get back to doing things. That's all it knows. When you can get the ego quiet, you'll realize the beauty of this. And this is what this chapter is really about. The beauty of experiencing the sunset. And then eventually he says, right, dissolution of form happens. And you, who appeared out of nowhere, you now just go back to the same place that you came from. You go back to the nothingness. And there's no stopping it. There's absolutely no stopping it. It's the expansion and the contraction. It's the heartbeat. It's the breath. That is life. We come, we express, we go back. And he kind of gets at, there's so much good stuff here. On page 284, I'm just going to read the beginning part. Awakening and the return movement. The return movement, right? The sunset of our life, the dissolution of form. The return movement in a person's life, the weakening or dissolution of form, whether through old age, illness, disability, loss, or some kind of personal tragedy, carries great potential for spiritual awakening. This is what all of you listening have the potential for. The disidentification of consciousness from form. Since there is very little spiritual truth in our contemporary culture, not many people recognize this as an opportunity. And so when it happens to them or to someone close to them, they think there is something dreadfully wrong. something that should not be happening. Okay? We think it's a problem when really it's not a problem at all. I can tell you, with my experience, right? I lost my health at the age of 23, which most people are not going through the dissolution of form at a young age. I did. And maybe some of you did, right? So at 23, the entire life that I created for myself, just withdrawn. I couldn't work. I had to get rid of all of my stuff. I couldn't earn money. It was just like everything was going. And it caused me to ask a lot deeper questions. I had a spiritual awakening. And to me, it was like the worst possible thing, losing everything, turned out to be the best possible thing. And I think he points out very aptly that contemporary culture, right, it's more obsessed with PTSD than PTG, post-traumatic stress disorder, which most people have some level of, right? Not realizing that, hey, those struggles were meant to open you up to post-traumatic growth, the spiritual awakening. They're meant to open you up to the truth that is within you. But most people don't see it. They miss it. They get obsessed with the PTSD. They get obsessed with the struggle. They harden in and down and get more anxious about how unstable life is, not realizing that, yes, there is instability, but because there's something greater beyond it, okay? There is in our civilization a great deal of ignorance about the human condition, and the more spiritually ignorant you are, the more you suffer. And I would say this is why most people suffer in this life. They don't open up to the post-traumatic growth. They don't realize the gift in their struggles because they're not seeing the spiritual component, right? In the West, we see the elderly as weak. We sanitize death. We put makeup on people's faces. I love how he just said there's like such a disconnect for us with death, and we're not even allowed to see dead bodies, right? Death remains a very abstract concept to most of us here in Western culture, and so we're unprepared for the dissolution of form that's coming for all of us, right? We're just completely unprepared for it, and I like highlighted this entire page. I thought this was like brilliant. Page 285. When it approaches, there is shock, incomprehension, despair, and great fear. Nothing makes sense anymore because all the meaning and purpose that life had for them was associated with accumulating, succeeding, building, protecting, and sense gratification. It was associated with the outward movement and identification with form, that is to say, the ego. Most people cannot conceive of any meaning when their life, their world, is being demolished. And yet, potentially, there is even deeper meaning here than in the outward movement. How many of you have seen this in someone that you have watched age? You have watched them freak out. You have watched them not be able to handle it. You've watched them have anxiety and panic. I'm watching it in real time with people. And it's like, what they're not seeing is that this is the crack that can open them, right? It's like, what does Rumi say? Like, the wound is where the light gets in. Like, what's happening is, the ego is dying. The ego is realizing it can't hang on for forever, and it wants to, so it's confusing. If you didn't realize you were more than your mind and your thoughts, it's a very confusing time in life. But if you have realized that, you see the potential for awakening. He says it is precisely through the onset of old age, through loss of or personal tragedy, and that's what I experienced, loss and personal tragedy, that the spiritual dimension would traditionally come into people's lives. This is to say, their inner purpose would emerge only as their outer purpose collapsed, and the shell of the ego would begin to crack open. Such events represent the beginning of the return movement toward the dissolution of form. All right? It's the beginning. It's beautiful. They were the repository. In ancient cultures, he talks about how intuitively they understood this. They revered their elders, right? They said that the elders were the repositories of wisdom, and they provided a dimension of depth without which no civilization can survive for long. And in our civilization, which is totally now identified with the outer world, we are ignorant of this inner dimension of spirit. And the word old has a negative connotation now. Isn't it kind of wild, right? I think it is absolutely wild. So put a 1 in the chat if you've seen this. Like, you've watched someone, as the dissolution of form is happening, you've watched them freak out and struggle, to grasp for it, not realizing that there is a huge dimension that this can potentially be opening. Like, it's like a portal is opening for them to be able to experience this depth of being. And let's see, isn't it interesting, like, that we in this culture consider like old is almost like useless? Have you ever pondered, like, why do we consider old to be useless? I think it is because we are so used to basically thinking the best thing ever is doing and what you can create in this world. And the emphasis as you get older shifts from doing to being. And our society says being, what the hell can I do with being? Being is useless. Being is pointless. We're not getting anything done just sitting around being. Right? And so we totally de-emphasize it. And that's just what happens. So on page 286, I thought it was really interesting. He talked about how, it can happen that children are exposed to death at an early age, or they experience things at a younger age, right? It's not, in this older decades of life that this is coming down, that they're having to just be more because their body can't do and all of that. They're not being forced into it by a shift in their body, but they're being forced into it because of circumstances around them. And what he says is that the disruption of the outward movement at a time when it is not meant to be happening, and he puts that in quotes, can also potentially bring forth an early spiritual awakening in a person. Ultimately, nothing happens that is not meant to happen, which is to say, nothing happens that's not part of the greater whole or purpose. Thus, destruction or disruption of the outer purpose can lead to finding your inner purpose and subsequently the arising of a deeper outer purpose that is aligned with the inner. I'm experiencing that in my life. It was like my outer purpose, this version of Danielle who I thought I was meant to become and becoming, was just stopped. It was a full, like, boom, hammer came down on that. There was no going back in that direction. And so now it's been like this inner reflection, and now I'm working towards aligning inner and outer purpose, right? To make sure that anything I'm now doing in the external is aligned with the inner, which is why I do book club, to help you all understand this inner dimension of life. It's why I do inner management mastery. It's why I have that program, to help you understand that and to give you the tangible techniques to experience this. So it's not just knowledge, but it's been viscerally experienced by your body that I am more than my mind. There is a whole nother dimension, right? We just haven't talked about it much. We haven't been taught about it in our society, but it's there. It's totally there. And he says, I love this, what is lost on the level of form is gained on the level of essence. I remember when I was in therapy after my accident, because I had a lot of anxiety and depression, because it was like everything I'd known was gone. And I thought, well, that's the end of Danielle, And he said to me, Danielle, at the end of this, you are not going to have a diploma, right? And I was watching all my friends going and continuing out in this world, getting degrees from top universities, Yale, Harvard, getting business degrees, PhDs. I was watching people go to med school. And he said, you're not going to get some certificate at the end of all of this. He said, but your emotional intelligence is going to be far beyond anyone else's your age, and it will make you a better mother. It will make you just a better human being. And that's what I held on to, because I was like, well, okay, maybe there's a point to going through all of this, right? And what I didn't realize was that that was the first sort of insight into this, that what was lost on the level of form was being gained on the level of essence. I was learning the truth of who I was, and this is true for all of us. He says, some great loss or disability on the level of form has become an opening into spirit. When you have had a direct experience of the unstable nature of all forms, you will likely never overvalue form again, and thus lose yourself by blindly pursuing it and attaching yourself to it. It's so very true. I've had this direct experience. I don't know if you all have, but reflect on that. I mean, after my accident, I put all my stuff in storage like my whole life. It was like, I'm coming back to it in a year. And after a year, I wasn't better. I had to go back to the storage unit, and I looked at all this stuff that had been so important to me, like everything, that was mine. And I looked at it and I was like, why did I pay to keep this? Like, this is ridiculous. And I got rid of all of it except like a suitcase of stuff that some like souvenirs from traveling, like that had like memories. And I went home with that and I sold everything. And ever since then, I just am not really attached to things, to stuff. I just don't care. Because I realized like it's temporary and it's kind of pointless. Like, okay, if it brings you some joy here in the short term, great, but don't obsess with it. Allow it to leave if it's going to leave. Like, things are not so important. And I love the wording of this was so beautiful. When you have had a direct experience of how unstable the nature of all form is. What I can tell you is that I learned that we are all here by a thread. That is what I learned through my own experience. Like, I got hit by a drunk driver, 7 a.m. in the morning. I was doing nothing wrong. Nobody was out there and awake. And all of a sudden, my life gets turned upside down. I could have lost my life that day. And it's like, I can't unknow that. You can't shake that feeling. What he says, once you've had a direct experience of how unstable the nature of all forms are, you will likely never overvalue them again. It is so very true. Like, you don't get lost in it all again. You're like, what's the point? It can all be taken away in a moment, right? There is something bigger always happening. It's crazy. It is crazy how you watch society is like lost in this. And it's crazy to watch. It's like sometimes I feel like I'm just surrounded by a bunch of crazy people that care about all this stuff. And I'm like, it's stuff. And it's gonna go. Like, it's impermanent. You're worrying about the wrong stuff. You're missing the beauty of life, right? Like, I am amazed by the eggs in my kitchen right now. I'm like, that is what's cool about life. Like, it comes from nothing. And then it's just here and it expands and whatever. My chickens are gonna die one day. Like, and I'm gonna watch the whole cycle. Amazing, amazing. I also started planting. I've got some stuff planted out here. Seeds, just as freaking incredible, right? Life just comes through water and soil and poof, and we watch it all the time. And how are we not mesmerized? Like, that to me is what life's all about. Who freaking cares about what car you drive? Like, look at flowers bloom. I mean, it's just amazing. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent. But here's the thing is you can miss this window. You could miss this opportunity. There's plenty of people that have had brain injuries and had issues like I had, and they don't come out the way I came out of it. Why? Because their ego like doubled down. Okay, and mine was doing that for the first year. The ego doubles down, and let me explain what I mean. He says, it's on page 287. He says, the opportunity that the dissolution of form, and in particular old age, represents is only just beginning to be recognized in our contemporary culture. In the majority of people, that opportunity is still tragically missed because the ego identifies with the return movement just as it identified with the outward movement. This results in a hardening of the egoic shell, a contraction rather than an opening, right? So it gets broken and it contracts. It becomes tighter, smaller, rather than busting open. The diminished ego then spends the rest of its days whining or complaining, trapped in fear or anger, self-pity, guilt, blame, or other negative mental emotional states or avoidance strategies, such as attachment to memories and thinking and talking about the past. Wow. Isn't that wild? You could look at people that are older in your life and see, what are they like? Right? Some are like radiant and beautiful and like connected with consciousness. And some are exactly what he described. Some people that have been through tragedy come out radiant and like this huge awakening. And others are bitter and angry because the ego got involved. That's why that ego is a trickster. You got to get rid of it. When the ego is no longer identified with the return movement in a person's life, old age or approaching death becomes what it is meant to be, which is an opening into the realm of spirit. That is what is supposed to happen. The challenges you go through are supposed to be the opening into the realm of spirit. Old age is like the last attempt for the opening into the realm of spirit. That's what's happening for everybody, for all of you. Okay, anything else I wanted to say about this? Let's see. I don't think so. I'll just finish up with this one thought, looking at the time. He talks about how on this new earth that is coming, old age will be recognized and highly valued as the time for the flowering of consciousness. I thought that was beautiful. He kept talking about old age. For me, I think about challenges. obstacles, like the stuff that breaks you, but is supposed to break you open. It's like that's where the flower of consciousness is going to come out, right? That's what I see. and so I don't know what age you all are, but whatever. If the end of life is closer than the beginning of life, then this is a chance for the flower of consciousness to open and expand. Like it's a beautiful opportunity. He says, on a new earth, old age will be universally recognized and highly valued as a time for the flowering of consciousness. For those who are still lost in the outer circumstances of their lives, it will be a time of a late homecoming, when they awaken to their inner purpose. It's never too late. You always can. For many others, it will represent an intensification and a culmination of the awakening process. All right? That's what it's all about, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this. We are coming towards the end of this book. I don't think we can finish it. Yeah, there's too much to finish. So we're on page 288. 309 is the last page. So we'll probably have to go to like 299. Is there a break point around there? I'll find a break point and I'll put it in Telegram. Probably enjoyment will be our break point on page 297. Yeah, let's call it that. So I'll be with you next week, and we'll go from there. So lots to contemplate on this one. Guys, make sure you share this with someone, tag somebody in this. This is a conversation that many need to have because they're missing. They're missing a whole other aspect of life. So enlighten them with it, help them, and I look forward to talking with you all next week. Anything that you wanted to say in between, obviously we have Telegram, and I'll chat with you over there. All right, bye guys.